Now, unless you really have been living in a galaxy far, far away for some time now, you've no doubt heard that Carrie Fisher, the actress who of course played Princess Leia, passed away last December. And I don't mean to sound in any way disrespectful to her memory or the pain her family and friends must feel, but this will of course have a great impact on the rest of the sequel trilogy, considering she was originally supposed to have an expanded role in Episode 9. And since Lucasfilm has already stated they will not either be recasting the part of Leia or trying to recreate her digitally, which are decisions I wholeheartedly agree with, it means changes will have to be made to Episode 9 and likely even to how this trilogy will end. Now, thankfully, filming for Episode 8 had already been completed before Carrie's passing, which means two things. We will be fortunate enough to get to see Princess Leia on screen one last time, and the story for Episode 8 won't have to be changed, though it still may be to fit in with whatever they ultimately decide to be the fate of Leia, or even to undo setting up her role in Episode 9. And as for the fate of Princess Leia within the Star Wars galaxy, well, my best guess says she will die off-screen between Episode 8 and 9, and it will be mentioned in the opening crawl of Episode 9. Though of course, she could also die in Episode 9 itself if they, perhaps, use something filmed for 8, like her aboard a ship, and we then see that ship destroyed at some point in Episode 9. But something tells me they won't do that. I tend to believe some might view it as wrong if they show her actually, in a sense, being killed on screen. I'm really not sure that's something her aforementioned family and friends would want to see, even if it's just implied. This all, of course, leaves us to wonder what her role would have been, and more importantly, what it will be now in Episode 8, with all things considered. And to be completely honest with you, I think some of the most interesting questions The Force Awakens left us with have to do with Leia, even though few rarely seem to talk about them. Such as, just how does Kylo Ren feel about his mother? Because we do get a great sense of what he thought about his father, mostly because of what he says to Rey about Han, that he was essentially a disappointment as a father, and of course by the fact that he does kill Han in the movie, but never once does he say a single word about his mother, good or bad, which makes me wonder, does he have a great deal of animosity or even hate for her, or does he maybe even love his mother dearly? And on the flip side, how does Leia feel about her son, both before and after he murdered Han? Because one thing to keep in mind is that Leia was the one who asked Han to bring Ben home and insisted there was still light in him, which has to make us wonder, where does Leia put the blame for Han's death? On herself for asking Han to confront him, or on Kylo for being the one who actually did the deed? Does she maybe even place some of the blame on Han, who, it is alluded to, was not the best father in the galaxy to Ben? More than likely though, I'd have to imagine she places a lot of the blame on herself. That just seems to be the type of character she is. And I think there may be several reasons why she blames herself, like her telling Han to bring him home when there's a good chance Han wouldn't have tried to do that without her encouragement. Then there's also the fact that she was likely the one that decided to keep the truth from Ben about his grandfather being Darth Vader. A truth that Ben doesn't find out about until about 6 years before the events of The Force Awakens, which we learn is the case in the book Bloodline. We also have it alluded to that perhaps Leia wasn't completely honest with Han about what had been going on with Ben, that a shadow had been hanging over him since before he was even born, which is something we learn about in the Aftermath series. And of course, that shadow was almost certainly Snoke, who has clearly had a keen interest in Ben for some time. And in The Force Awakens, Leia even says that it was Snoke that was responsible for his fall to the dark side, and the novelization goes into it even further by having her say that Snoke had been watching Ben from the shadows all along, which pretty much seemed to imply she had never told that to Han before, about the extent of Snoke's manipulations, I mean. And this also might imply Leia never told Luke about that either, for fear maybe Luke would take Ben away from them, as harsh as that may sound of Luke to do. And speaking of Luke, I think that brings up another huge question The Force Awakens left us with. Just when did Han and Leia send Ben away to Luke to be trained? What age was he, and what, if anything, finally happened that seemed to force their hand and made them agree Ben needed help or guidance from Uncle Luke? And then of course there's the possibility that they didn't agree. What if Leia thought he should be sent away and Han didn't, and this is what started to form the rift between them that led to their separation? What if Han, who didn't know about Snoke and the shadow hanging over Ben, was even vehemently opposed to their son being sent away to Luke for Jedi training? What if Leia even sent Ben away without Han's consent, and this is when he, more or less, called up Chewie and returned to the life of smuggling? This could even begin to explain perhaps the biggest mistake in The Force Awakens, that being when Chewie walked right by Leia at the end of the movie after they had both just lost Han. And yes, I know that J.J. Abrams has admitted this was a mistake, and I know there are some that will think I'm just trying to make excuses for him. But as I said, J.J. knows and has admitted to the mistake, and the simple truth is, I'd like for that scene to make sense, and for there to be a reason why they didn't seek each other out, and one way to do that is if Chewie blames Leia for Han's death. How and why might that be the case? Well, if Leia did send Ben away despite Han being against it, then maybe Chewie, in a sense, blames Leia for Ben becoming Kylo Ren and then killing Han because that would not have happened had she just listened to Han and not sent him away to Luke in the first place. Sure, that may sound a bit irrational, but I wouldn't imagine a Wookiee that has just lost his best friend would be the most rational thing in the galaxy. And Leia may have very well realized, or even sensed, Chewie's anger and thought it best to not approach him there and then. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a scene between these two, and maybe even at the rumored funeral for Han in Episode 8. Okay, so setting aside why Ben was sent away, and who may have been for or against it, I do believe Leia was going to play a huge role in either bringing her son back to the light, or somehow being responsible for a further and maybe even final fall to the dark side. And that's because I think Kylo Ren, or Ben, truly cares about and loves his mother. In fact, I even think it's possible that Leia was the reason why Kylo ultimately decided to kill his father Han in the first place. How could that possibly be? Well, a comment to one of my previous videos by Janet Rubio suggested that perhaps Kylo Ren killed Han because if he did so, Snoke promised to spare his mother, who again I think Kylo Ren cares a great deal about. And as J.J. Abrams said during his commentary for The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren likely wasn't just playing with Han on that bridge, and did consider walking away from it all, because he knows that Snoke is using him, but that he's afraid he's already too far gone to be saved. But perhaps there's more to it than that, and what he was afraid of was that Snoke would do something to his mother if he didn't kill his father, and instead turned back to the light and went home. There's also the fact that the novelization of The Force Awakens says that Kylo Ren felt weaker after killing his father, maybe because he didn't really want to do it, and he knew the impact it would have on his mother if he did. In fact, in the book Bloodline, an assassination attempt was made on Leia's life, and what's really curious about this is that the author of the book, Claudia Gray, confirmed that this scene was put in the book at the request of Rian Johnson, who is of course the writer and director of Episode 8. So maybe this event is what ultimately turned Ben's soul to the dark side, being shown how easily Snoke could get to his mother if he wanted to, and Kylo was left with no choice but to turn to the dark side to try and save his mother. This could even start to explain Kylo talking to Vader's mask and wanting to be shown the power of the dark side again. Maybe, like Anakin before him, he wants to become powerful enough to save the ones he cares about from dying. Or in this case, he wants to be powerful enough to eventually kill Snoke. Finishing what Vader or Anakin started could be as simple as saving the ones he cares about from dying. And what's really interesting about this possibility is with Leia again likely perishing between Episode 8 and 9 off screen, we could learn in Episode 9 that Snoke was indeed responsible for her death. And this is the nudge Kylo Ren needs to start coming back to the light. And I know that a lot of people out there either don't like the idea that Kylo can or will be redeemed and come back to the light, but to do it for the sake of his mother Leia might be one possibility some of those people might be willing to accept. Honestly though, one way or another, I think Rey is going to play a big part in what side Kylo Ren ends up on, and probably more so now that Leia will not be in Episode 9, because I dare say, and you can certainly disagree with me here, that Leia's absence in Episode 9 may lead to some form of Reylo taking place. And by that I mean some type of relationship, even if it's just some type of mutual understanding to defeat Snoke, taking place that brings Kylo Ren and Rey together. Because Rey being tempted by the dark and Kylo's possible return to the light have to be played at in these next two movies. And as I've said so many times before, this will not be a simple story of Rey on the light versus Kylo on the dark, but rather something with a few twists and turns that keeps us guessing all the way up till the end. And although Luke will no doubt play a huge role in these next two movies, I'm not so sure he plays a huge role in the fate of Kylo Ren. In fact, I'm not even sure he plays a huge role in the fate of Rey either. I personally feel that at the end of Episode 8, Rey will abandon her training and Luke will challenge Snoke on his own towards the start of Episode 9. And though I hate to say it, I think he loses and dies at that point. What that would do would show just how powerful Snoke is, and that the only hope of stopping him would be with the combined force of both Rey and Kylo Ren. And again, I think these two characters' fates will be intertwined and decided by each other in a way, especially with Leia not being in Episode 9 to have any bearing, directly anyway, on Kylo's ultimate decision on light side or dark side. Because I have to imagine, originally Kylo Ren and Leia were going to meet and confront each other in Episode 9, and that likely would have been one of, if not the most powerful scenes in the entire trilogy. I mean, just think of it. What does a son say to his mother after killing his father? And what does a mother say to her son that murdered his own father? Does she hate him for it? Or forgive him because she knows how tortured he's been, that Snoke had haunted him his whole life, and maybe Leia feels, right or wrong, like she's failed as a mother because she didn't protect him. These are some of the questions I would love to see answered in Episode 9, but I fear we never will get those answers now. And again, the untimely passing of Carrie Fisher was a true loss and a tragedy, and I dare say it hit me much harder than any other celebrity passing in my life. In fact, at the risk of sounding like a callous person, it usually doesn't have much impact on me when I hear about the death of a celebrity. But this was different. This felt like losing someone I truly knew and cared about, and someone who had, in a sense, been with me my whole life. And I know Star Wars is really just a collection of movies, and they are insignificant when compared to the lives of those who make up those movies. But this truly feels like a shame that Carrie Fisher will not get the chance to finish out the story of Princess Leia as originally intended, or to hear the continued gratitude of the fans who are so very thankful to her for reprising this beloved role one last time. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Will we see Kylo Ren and Leia confront each other in Episode 8, or was that something that was being saved for the final chapter of this trilogy? Also, how do you think Kylo Ren feels towards his mother? Is there animosity there, like for his father? Or does Kylo Ren truly care about and love his mother? Let me know in the comments below what you think, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.